Hello world is a song.
Well, and also to us, you will always just be Christopher Atkins. So if we actually are talking to you and we say, so Christopher Atkins, because that's an image. That is curly hair, loincloth, puka shells, a big stick, a spear. That's Christopher Atkins.
Yeah. Christopher Atkins. Yeah. It rolls off our tongue.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't for us at all.
Most definitely.
It does. Yeah.
Well, Kristen, before you start anymore,
okay,
Christopher, I'm going to ask you a quick favor. It seems like that your mic, which is on your, headphone thing, is like sometimes it's rubbing against your shirt, so we get like a little staticky sound. Yeah, like that. So maybe.
So just take the shirt off.
You could do that. How did you know that's where I was leaving?
I mean, I'm not wearing any pants, so I guess it doesn't matter.
Anyway,
neither are we.
High five.
Yes. I'll put
All
the
right,
drum.
I'll try to hold it away.
Yes.
Thank you for telling me.
That is great. That is great. Okay,
no worries.
I'm going to read your intro now. We will officially begin this interview. Okay, where am I? Pull yourself together,
I don't even know.
I know. Joining us now is a person who is placed firmly in the timeline of anyone who identified as pubescent in the year 1980. Whether you wanted to marry him or not, you took notice. Because he was naked. And he was naked on a fantasy island with a girl who was basically your age, and it felt like the whole world was changing. Thanks in part to Christopher Atkins and the puberty drama Blue Lagoon. And it sounds like I'm making fun, but I'm not. Because everybody needs help on that journey, right? And this guy was there for so many people, helping us turn the corner into adolescence. So thank you, Christopher Atkins, and welcome to the Pop Culture Preservation Society.
Thank you. Wow, that was quite an intro.
You played a big role in people's lives, right?
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, so defining for me.
It was. Over the years, I've heard a lot of different things about that movie. Even to this day, I still get people who will write things about their sexuality or growing up with that film. Some people loved it for the beauty, and a lot of people really identified with the beauty and the sensuality in the film.
It was a teacher for a lot of people. It was the first opportunity that a lot of us got to say, I'm having some funny feelings.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also, we can go, I can go back to 1980. I can't imagine I saw it at the theater in 1980 because I would have only been 11 years old, but it was such an impactful movie, whether it was we saw it over and over at slumber parties and we're pausing it all the time. And we can look back at it through that lens and, through, our 11, 12, 13-year-old lens and go, oh, we were doing that because, the naked bodies and the whatever. But looking back at it now through a 53-year-old lens, it really was defining and important for many of the reasons Kristen just said. It was helping us. I was infatuated with the Blue Lagoon. I couldn't get enough of it. And it really wasn't just because we were at slumber parties pausing it, when, Christopher Atkins comes out of the water or when he's swimming in the water or when whatever. It was for all of it. It was for the relationship and for so much of it. So, there's many things you can think about or say about that movie, but I think it was important, is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah.
For at least for me. It was
Talk
important.
to any 54-year-old woman. She'll tell you.
Yeah.
Well, that's very nice. It is interesting it's usually guys pausing the film.
But that's important too. For pubescent boys at that age, maybe. That was an important movie for them as well then.
Yeah, there was a lot of... See, the interesting thing to me that I loved about the film afterwards was the love story aspect of it. It was a very Romeo-Juliet picture. And I think it really captured everybody's fantasy of this just alone on an island, a beautiful place, these two people finding each other. The innocence of it, I think, really was very dynamic in a lot of people's lives because the fantasy helped move that dynamic. But it also reached and touched a lot of different areas that were not talked about or and
Taboo.
and it brought that out in a very innocent way. And it was interesting because, of course, everybody talks about the nudity and everything. And let me tell you, after that movie, you'll never see me on a regular beach. I'm always on a nude beach. If you want to see me, come say hi. I'm on a nude beach. Okay?
Change your life. We'll recognize you.
Over with. Yeah, absolutely. God, I love you. But it was very interesting because I have had so many different people come up to me about that movie in so many different ways. For instance, I have a huge gay following after that movie, and I did an interview with a gay magazine in New York City, and they were asking me in the interview, do you know why you have such a huge gay following? And I said, well, I mean, besides the obvious, no, why? Is there some other reasons? And he said, no, it's very, very interesting. He said to me that at that point in time in the 80s was the whole AIDS thing, and people were slowly just starting to be able to come out. The mayors and police and the things like this were taking the risks and coming out. And here was a movie that celebrated male nudity, or a little bit more than female nudity, which had always been. Right. And they felt that this was a movie for them at a time in history where things were just starting to move. So he said historically it hit a nerve at that time and place in history. And I never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. I did an interview in the Netherlands not long ago, a couple of years ago. I did a TV interview, and I had two producers, a male and a female. The female came up to me and said, I knew I wasn't gay when I saw your movie. And the male came up to me and said, I knew I was gay when I saw that movie. And I've heard that over and over and over. But that's the impact that film has had. Yeah. To this day, I'm still getting new fans on this picture.
Wow. That's incredible. And I had never put that together before. You are right. This celebrates male nudity far more than it does female nudity.
Being outdoors, I love sailing and the fishing and scuba diving and hiking and camp. I love the outdoors. I love the whole natural world. And so being on this island, literally, which a lot of people for some reason don't understand or realize, but we were really on a deserted island. There was nothing on the island. I lived on a boat for the first 2 weeks that we were filming because there was no place for me to stay on the island. And then I ended up moving it. The whole crew and everything lived in tents. They built this thing called tent cities that lived on platforms. Now there's this beautiful 18-star resort there that only handles like 15 people at a time or something, and they really capitalized on
that same island.
Yeah, it's a really super upscale resort on that island now.
Why couldn't you have just lived in the super cool house that you guys ended up building? Like, that was amazing. It had slides, and it had like an attic, and there was like a kitchen area. We loved that. That was amazing. That was like Swiss Family Robinson style. Like, it was crazy cool. Why couldn't you just? They're like, sorry, cut. Now everybody go back to the tent.
Yep, I was in a tent way down one end of the beach by myself, and every night I'd walk back from the main camp, and it was probably half a mile to my tent. And it was one of those, it was literally like out of the movie. I'm walking under stars that were so thick, like you could brush them away, like they said in Field of Dreams. It was just absolutely unbelievable. And then you hear the mud crabs going at night and all this, and just every night that's what we would do. We'd eat in the beret, as it was called, and then I'd go back to walk down the beach back to my tent.
It's kind of
What a
scary though, because
life-changing.
you literally were going to the other side of the island where you were forbidden to go to because, you know, some dangerous things happened over there. So, were you ever scared that you were going to see like some bloody offering on a rock? Or I need to get my head out of the movie and realize that we're talking about reality, but I just can't do it. Sorry.
Well, the funny thing about it is if you look at the stone god, he looks just like the director. So everybody jokes that they built
my
it
God.
to mimic and mock the director as just sort of something
funny.
fun that nobody would ever know in a million years. But it does.
So
It looks
funny.
Just like anyway, so this lady took pictures of me and sent me into this modeling agency that her kids were modeling with. And the next thing I know is this guy got me 2 modeling jobs, one for a cover of a book. And I didn't know how to model. I didn't know what modeling was all about. It was a little weird to me. But, oh, my God, I made more money walking in and out of a door with a Smith Corona typewriter than I did all summer teaching sailing. Next thing I know is I got into the Ford modeling agency, and then through Ford, I started auditioning for movies. And when I auditioned for Blue Lagoon, I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I can tell all my friends, oh, I read those lines. I went and met on that movie when it comes out. Little did I know I had no thought in a million years. I was one of 4,000 kids who auditioned for that movie.
Wow.
So it was a shot in the dark, and then when I got it, I said no. I was on my way I was going to miss the train because I was playing softball for Ford, and I didn't want to miss the game. And I said, no, I gotta go. I don't know anything about making movies. I can't do it. They were like, no, you don't understand. They don't understand. I said, back at that time, it was a $4 million picture. I said, there's only 2 people in the whole movie. I said, that's $2 million on my head. I don't want that. And then the casting director said, we wouldn't have cast you if we didn't think you could do it. So anyway, that was that. But I went off and made the picture, and I was gone for 4.5 months on this deserted island in the middle of Fiji. And when I came back, everybody was already at school. College had already started. And that was a very weird time for me because it was all a dream. What happened to me? Where is everybody? I'm at home. I have nothing to do. I don't know what to do. I'm not working. I'm not doing anything. I haven't heard anything from the movie people. That was gone. And it wasn't for a month or 2 when things started coming to me, for instance, to do looping on the film or to do these little things. And then Columbia Pictures then started getting more and more communicative with me about interviews and this whole thing. And then they realized what they wanted to do, I guess, after they saw the movie, was send me on a tour for literally almost 2 years, 1.5 years.
Wow.
All over the world. So that's when everything really changed. And I guess literally the movie took me from a sailing instructor to the movie star in 1980. It was Columbia Pictures' biggest picture in 1980.
Absolutely.
And they literally had the police in Rye had to run somebody out of town like they did in the Wild West because they were sleeping in their car in front of my parents' house waiting for me to come home.
Oh, my God.
Things like this. All of that started. Anywhere I went after that picture, we were on every single TV show. We were on every single magazine. I did interviews with Andy Warhol. I was on the cover of Interview magazine. You can find that online. I mean, all kinds of amazing things, but this was all over the world. So, literally overnight, my entire life changed.
Wow.
It's
Do they
incredible.
give you any support in terms, like, mentally, how to deal with all this? Because that had to really be hard and messing with your mind a little. Do you get any advice, or do they give you a therapist or anything?
Alcohol.
I was just about to ask. No, but I was
God.
actually,
Yeah.
in all seriousness, about to ask you that. Is that when you kind of started down that path? Because that I can surely, understand how. How old were you at the time? Were you 18 when you did Blue Lagoon?
I was 18 when I did Blue Lagoon.
Okay,
yeah.
so now you're about 19, 20, right? When you're doing all the press.
Yep.
I mean, my goodness, that's the age where you're still so like impressionable. I mean, the drinking age is 21 for a reason, right? Your little brain's not completely formed.
In New
until then.
York, New York at that time, it was 18.
Oh,
So
Well,
I
sure,
was
actually,
drinking.
back then it was.
Yeah,
it was.
remember those
You were
days?
drinking legally, but you know, you hear about the Drew Barrymores
Mm-hmm.
and the Rob Lowe's and everything, and everybody's saying they had this fame so instantly, and what helped them kind of numb it and it not be so kind of in your face was alcohol, was drugs, which whatever your vice of choice was. So
Well,
it's
the other thing
understandable,
is
certainly.
It was the 80s. And it was
Well, true.
the 80s, every single solitary party, and especially every Hollywood party, had everything just laid out. I mean,
Oh,
it was
we grew
all-
up in the
it
80s.
was- yeah,
Yeah.
it was all there. People say that you either survived, went through rehab, or died from the 80s.
Yeah, that's so true
right.
when you think about it.
Yeah. So anyway, no, nobody gave me any. There was none of that. As a matter of
Okay.
fact, what was the most difficult, and people don't understand this, is it's not easy. I mean, filmmaking isn't easy at all. It's very, very difficult. It's not all sunglasses and autographs. It's it's a lot of hard work and long days. I mean, hard work. And then afterwards, for instance, the junkets, and when they sent me on tour, I would have breakfast and never be able to eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner because they would have a line of interviewers, one after another, and then they'd ask the same questions over and over and over for their magazines. So you'd have to make it fresh for each single person when you're talking to them.
Yeah.
And you never got to eat, and you were saying the same things over and over all over the world for 2 years. It's kind of insanity. But it's the way that it works. I mean, that's the marketing aspect. That's what you have to do. And I mean, you look back and you go, wow, that was cool, because how many people actually get that opportunity in the movie business that come to California with the dreams of being a movie star and actually get that brass ring.
right.
You know, and so I'm very fortunate that I didn't even want it, and I got that brass ring. And I met a lot of very wonderful people. I saw a lot of great things, and traveled and saw a lot of wonderful countries. So I was very fortunate in that respect. But the movie was, like you said, it's still endearing, and it's still long lasting after all of these years.
People
I
have
have
big
one fun
feelings.
story I want to share with you. Yeah, big feelings. This is something fun I want to share with you. We heard from, this is probably about one of those events that you were just talking about. We heard from a woman named Cindy who landed in the pages of 16 magazine thanks to you. And she said she was standing in a line that wrapped around the block to get a signature from Christopher Atkins. And the day before, she had broken her leg. And she was on crutches, and she had a cast from her foot all the way up to her thigh. And your people saw her waiting in the line on her crutches and brought her to the very front of the line. And she got, I don't know if you can see this at all, but she got to be the very first
She said,
signature
"I see her."
with you, and you signed her cast. So I had to ask her. So that picture is from 16 magazine. So I was like, did you keep the cast? Because you don't have that cast on your leg forever. She said she did keep the cast in a trash bag for years and years and years, until her mom was like, this thing stinks. You cannot keep it.
Gosh.
She said it smells so bad.
Oh,
She's
my
like, no, Mom, I have to
gosh.
keep it. Mom wasn't having it and made her get rid of the cast in this trash bag.
Oh, that was probably traumatic for her.
Yeah, but that was
know.
probably also before eBay, because if eBay would have been around, she could have sold
Can
that
you
smelly
imagine?
cast for probably, thousands and thousands of dollars, right?
I'm imagining that was sort of a common occurrence for you. Lines of people around the block waiting for your signature.
Back then, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now nobody recognizes me anymore, which is...
Well,
Okay, can we
and
ask you a
one
question?
reason,
Yeah,
one
I mean,
that's-
reason is because
The
you
hair.
have beautiful hair, but it's straight hair, and that is your natural hair.
That's my natural hair.
Whose idea was it for the curly hair? Because it became so iconic, and it's not your hair.
No, the director always saw that character as a Greek Adonis. Just that, that curly
okay,
Greek Adonis look. And so that's why they kept curling my hair and curling. When I was done with that film, sorry about the mic. When I was done with that film, I looked like Albert Einstein. My hair was all broken and sticking straight
funny.
up. It was awful. Awful. Because they permed it, constantly perming it.
Oh my gosh. Well, it begs the question on that island for so many years. You must have obviously had some scissors and a razor because Brooke Shields, Emmeline's hair grows and grows, but your hair, you never grow a beard. Your hair is never longer. It looks the same when you're a teenager as it does when you're a little boy.
I'm still waiting for puberty.
Oh, is that it? I think you hit it in that movie. No, we saw you go through puberty in that movie, Christopher Atkins. In the water, we saw you go through puberty. Yeah, you swam along as you went through puberty.
How long did they make you keep the curly hair?
Well, I had to keep. Listen, every movie after that. If you look at the pirate movie, they wanted me in the curly hair and everything. The only movie was A Night in Heaven where I finally got to break out of the curly hair. And I kept telling people, the interviews and stuff. I said, I can't wait till one day when they ask me to do a movie to keep my clothes on. Now I'm there. Now I'm there. But even then, it was only 3 years ago, I think, that I did a play in Australia where I had to be butt naked on stage.
Oh my God.
Well, it's only when people recognize you, Christopher Atkins. You know what's funny about that?
Eyes up here.
The hair thing, though, is that I was a huge fan of Dallas because my mom watched Dallas. So I got to watch Dallas probably way earlier than I should have watched Dallas. I don't know. But I was way too young for A Night in Heaven, so I didn't know you from that. But I had seen Blue Lagoon, pirate movie, so I knew the curly hair. So when you show up on Dallas as Sue Ellen's much younger, she's a cougar, right?
Boy toy. Mm-hmm.
She was the first cougar.
I remember you very specifically from Dallas. However, I was probably last year's old. I was probably 52 years old when it sort of connected that, wait, I remember Sue Ellen's boy toy. That was Christopher Atkins because
you didn't know that was him?
Not probably until very recently. No.
Oh my
because
God.
I'm all the posters in Tiger Beat, everything, you have the curly hair, right? But can we go back for just a minute? We're gonna.
I'll
keep
tell
talking.
you a funny story about
please.
Dallas, though. Quick,
please.
Was all right. Two things. Going back to your pausing movies, when my ex decided she didn't want to be married anymore, and the whole thing. The first girl that I dated was a casting director for MTV. And I went to go over to her house, and this was one of the first times I was dating her. She was crazy. And I come in, and she says, here, sit down for a second. And she's got the TV on and A Night in Heaven on, and she is hitting the pause button so it goes frame by frame by frame, and then she stops and goes, what's that? I went, oh, my God, come on, man.
Oh, come on.
That's a little awkward.
That's a true story. Well, she had a good sense of humor, too, and she was like, so what's that?
Oh, so
like,
funny.
Oh, my.
That's pretty
And then
funny.
another true story, which is as weird as they get, I got a call from my manager when I was doing Dallas, and he said, the network wants you to quit stuffing your Speedo. I said, excuse me? I didn't even know what stuffing was at that time. And he said, he was laughing. He said, yeah, that's the note you got from the network was the stuff. I said, oh, come on. They've got to be kidding. This
You're
is like a joke, right?
I'm so sorry.
April
That's
Fools?
real. Yeah.
I said, I've never been complimented that way before.
It's like
The
the
network
famous...
exec with a very small package. And he's like, that can't be real.
Well, at least it wasn't my acting that they were.
It's the famous Seinfeld line. It's mine and it's all real. But you know what? For those, I don't know, Carolyn and Kristen, if you watch Dallas, but Christopher's
I'm going to
character
now.
was a swim coach.
I'm going to watch the Speedo.
You can find a lot of clips on YouTube. Of,
I've signed a lot of Speedo pictures.
You can go back
God,
and
so
find
funny.
Dallas clips of Christopher in the Speedo, because when I found this out, I remember going, was that Christopher Atkins? And you can search. But he was the swim coach of Sue Ellen and JR's little boy. Just the more you know. But
Right.
Okay, so Chris, we recently listened to your conversation with Brooke Shields on her podcast called Now What? Listeners, check it out. It's a new podcast and delightful. And it was so fun to hear the two of you back together and talking about your memories of Blue Lagoon. And I had some other questions about Blue Lagoon that I was going to ask you, but you've already answered them. So what I'd like to know instead is, could you just tell us about what you remember filming it with your, because we're all, Brooke Shields is a huge Gen X icon of ours as well. We were all infatuated with Brooke Shields. And so one, we loved Blue Lagoon because she was in it. Too, but we were infatuated with this whole romance idea, and both of you going through very real feelings that we were all going through at the time, at the age we were watching the movie. To kind of, what was your relationship like during the movie? We all want to know that. You were 18, she was 14. To kind of now, it seemed to us in this her podcast, Now What, that you guys have really your friendship and your respect for each other has really endured all these decades.
Well, yeah, we spent 4.5 months together on a deserted island, and we were the only two close to each other's age on that island. And
Right.
she had done movies before. She did the
Pretty Baby.
Pretty Baby.
She had done
thank you.
Pretty Baby, yeah.
Yeah.
She had done Pretty Baby, and she was a very famous model, and I didn't know who she was. I never saw Pretty Baby, and I just remembered the Scavullo model thing, and I remembered the big hubbub about taking a 12-year-old girl and making her look like she's 20 back then, and that was a whole big scandal and all that. The director literally put a picture of her over my bunk in the boat where I was living, and I was there 2 weeks before she got there, and he wanted me to fall in love with her before she got there.
Like, in real life, he wanted you to fall in love with him?
In real life. Well, because it shows on camera. So he wanted,
good point.
Yeah, so he wanted me to fall in love with her and all of that. And she was 14. She was very young and innocent. I mean, I think I was the first guy to ever actually kiss her. And her mom wanted that to happen. But it was very sweet and it was very innocent. Like, for instance, we both enjoyed walking around the beach and collecting the shells, and I would talk to her about things. I'll never forget a time that she was telling me about the business at 14. Super intelligent girl, and the business, and how she desperately wanted black velvet, and I think Tatum O'Neal got it. And she was very into horses at the time and all of this, and she was explaining about
National Velvet. Is
National Velvet. Thank you.
Oh,
yes,
right.
National Velvet. Yeah. And she was just explaining to me about ups and downs in the business and dreams and hopes and wishes and things don't go and how to deal with all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, we had our little kids spats too. I mean, I don't really spat with anybody, but there were just times where we're humans, we get cranky.
Yeah, right.
But we, like you said, if it was anything that was, honestly, anything that was a big deal or very dramatic, we wouldn't be talking to each other. And we wouldn't have that respect.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you were stuck on an island together. I mean, that's
exactly.
a little intense.
Well,
and she was
thrown
14.
into situations, very, very maybe uncomfortable situations at times for one or the other of you.
I am naked, going down a slide, full frontal naked in front of this 14-year-old girl. And I mean, and it was very natural. I know today's day, everybody wants to jump on the whole thing about pedophiles and this and that and the whole. No, this was a very, very safe, very innocent movie, and this is just life. I mean, it wasn't. There was no weirdness at all whatsoever. But this is the reality, and so it was things like that, and we even talked about it in the podcast.
Yeah, you did.
And so those were the fun, silly stories that we have, and people just take things way too seriously these days, and they make big deals out of it for what? For their own attention. I can only assume, but it was a very special time. That movie wasn't making a film; it was a piece of life. It has never gone away. It was something that was a life experience rather than just I've made over 100 movies, but that was a life experience. And I know it was for her, too. It was a very big deal. She was growing up. She turned 15 on the island. A lot of things were changing with her at the time, which worked for the film. She was a beautiful girl. We had our little romance. We didn't have our little romance. We always had our friendship. It was just a very interesting, but as I always like to say, very magical time in both our lives.
Right. It was a showmance, you know? I mean, you can't be in those situations and not have a showmance with the person that you're with. And it was also probably very, chaperoned almost. I mean, you're there with a whole bunch of other adults too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it wasn't like there wasn't anybody around. It was a full cast and crew, and they were all adults. Yeah, no. It was. I think people
should watch Blue Lagoon. Should listen to this interview first, and then watch Blue Lagoon, because I think this context is really important. Because people could really jump to some scary places. I can see myself doing that. I'm sure when you just look at the movie without taking these words into consideration, it changes things dramatically.
Oh, for sure.
It's really the epitome of cinema verite, is what you're telling us, is that they were telling the truth about what would happen on an island with people this age as they grew up. Right. This is what would happen.
Right.
It's just being truthful.
But the 80s were a different story than now.
Sure.
See what I mean? So the 80s was a huge change in history in a lot of different ways, like I had mentioned before. You could do these things. Things were a lot more relaxed. Now it seems everybody wants to jump on something, whatever they can, to make it different, but it's wrong, everything's wrong, and that's just wrong. I mean, and like you said, now if you looked at it, your brain would go, oh my God, because that's what's out there right now, instead of stop for a second, relax, time out, what's really going on. And here you are talking about how this movie impacted you back then. But as parents,
it's a difference.
Now you're looking at it going, oh, I can't believe they did that, right? And then at the same time, we did, and it was okay.
Right. That's been one of the benefits, I think, and joys of this podcast for me, frankly, is revisiting these movies or TV shows, whatever, or situations as an adult. But we, at the same time, look back and be like, we could like that then. Like, that's okay. We can honor how we felt and who we were in 1980 and how we approached Blue Lagoon and loved it. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that because that's who we were then. And I love being able to have that discussion with my two co-hosts and knowing that that's okay, that I don't have to be embarrassed to say, oh, I kind of really like Blue Lagoon. And, this is why. It's really a nice thing.
Yeah, and that's what's great about listening to you is because a lot of people can't now. They can't.
Definitely.
And that's,
I want to ask you. I want to ask you about your 1982 film, The Pirate Movie, with Kristy McNichol, which also, interestingly, has another big cult following. We've had listeners and some of our followers write in like, that is the movie for them. That is when you were on the radar. They will never forget that movie. And kind of like for some people, it's their Blue Lagoon, I think. We wanted to ask you, one, do you keep in touch at all with Kristy McNichol? Because she is also going to be at this event. We're sitting at her table, by the way, because yours was sold. Not because yours was sold out, but we're sitting with Kristy. Have you seen her? Do you keep in touch? What is that like?
I do keep in touch with Kristy, and she's one of the probably only stars that, besides Brooke, that I've actually kept in contact with over these years. And I just absolutely adore Kristy. I love her to death and would do anything for her. She's just a tremendous human being. And I always said, if you could harness Kristy, you could probably light all of Australia because the girl has more energy than anybody I've ever met in my life. But
wow.
she's she's great, and we've been doing autographs during COVID. People were buying autographs, and so she would sign and then send it to me, and then I would sign, so they get both signatures.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times you can't get both signatures. So we were constantly in contact all over that, and she asked me to do something for her over Christmas, then to do a little video for something she was working on, and things like that. So yeah, Kristy's
great.
wonderful.
Oh, we love to know
Kristy's
that.
I
You
love
think
to hear
do you
that.
think
That makes us so happy.
She is so super talented. Every time I hear "Hold On" and the music from the pipe, she's just pumping and blowing. She's got an amazing voice. I love listening to her voice.
We recently watched, did an episode on Little Darlings, and, we'd all seen it back in the day and had all these memories of it, but watching it now through our current lens, she is incredible in that movie. Like,
I brought some show and tell here.
Oh, yes, please.
This just keeps getting better and better.
I don't know if you can see some of these.
Curly hair.
Are those all
Oh my
original
gosh.
pictures?
Yeah. These are pictures that were taken on the island, and
Oh my goodness, it's like a little collage.
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
I showed these to Brooke. It's somebody, I guess, I don't know who put it together. I might have put it together years.
Look at you
years
kids.
ago.
I'm imagining, Chris, I'm imagining some of those look very familiar to me from all the, the
Movie
publicity
stills
pics, but
and
I'm
stuff.
imagining some of those are never before seen pictures. Listeners, we just got a big treat. We'll put this part on YouTube
And then
so you guys can see it.
Here's the Dusty Gold album.
Your gold album.
He is. He's showing us the proof.
That's so cool. And that's on your wall.
That's
Hallelujah.
incredible.
Right?
And remind people of the song. Which song from the movie?
How Can I Live Without Her?
How Can I Live Without Her? Okay.
And then here's one that I thought you might like, that I put together years and years ago. But Olivia Newton-John was a very dear friend of ours.
Oh, come
Stop
on.
it.
And so this is where we were camping together. We would go camping together, and her kid and my kid were born very close to each other.
I had no idea.
She was
but that
my
makes perfect sense.
She was my son's godmother.
Oh, you're kidding us.
Okay, so this was a hard year for you then.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, it was a horrible year for us too.
It was awful.
But
so anyway,
that-
so those are a few things that I thought you'd like.
Hello, world.